Texas beats their rival Arkansas 20-10, but the game was a lot closer than a lot of people thought it should have been. 20-10. We discuss on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. It's Monday's episode, so Tony Monk from Spot on Sports joining us once again to talk Texas Longhorns football. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season or at any point get a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So just visit FanDuel.com to get started on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. The takeaways and reactions from Texas, Arkansas on Saturday. In the second segment, the players of the game, Texas won. So who stood out to me and Tony? And then in the last segment, our confidence in Quinn Ewers moving forward for the remainder of the season. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My takeaways and reactions, Tony, before I really get into what I wrote down, I just want to say that, it's cool, seeing this move to the SEC and seeing Texas be able to renew rivalries with schools like Arkansas. You've been playing since the 1800s. This is the 80th matchup between Texas and Arkansas. So many schools were negatively impacted by realignment. Texas being able to play Texas A&M and Arkansas again every year, going back and forth between Fayetteville and Austin, going back and forth between College Station and Austin. Texas really benefited in a big way. The fans really benefited in a big way from college realignment. Now getting into my takeaways and reactions from what we saw on Saturday. The first one is a win is a win, right? Whether you win by 20 points, you win by 1 point, a win is a win. With that being said, right, I'm happy we won. But with that being said, I thought the offense was very disappointing, right? It's very disappointing that coming off a bye week, you can score 49 points. You can explode in the manner that you did against Florida, albeit missing some defensive starters. And you start to feel like, okay, this offense is back on track. Like Steve Sarkisian is back in his bag. Running game is, starting to click. The offensive line is playing better. And Quinn is starting to figure it out. You have that performance. And then immediately the next week, I know it's a rivalry game, right? I know Arkansas got up for that game. I know you're on the road. But then immediately we go back to asking the same questions. A Steve Sarkisian offense, is this offense good enough to win a championship? Like, we had that one moment of, oh, okay, like this offense against Florida looks like they did the first 6 weeks. And then immediately the next week, when you're expecting it to roll over, it does the complete opposite, right? And we're back asking the question, is this offense good enough to play complementary football with this defense and win a championship? And with Steve Sarkisian being our head coach and the amount of talent we have on the offensive side of the ball, I don't think that's a question we should be asking, Tony. But yeah, it's a question we're asking. When you look at it last week, you go from 49 points last week to 20 this week. You go from 562 yards against Florida to 315 against Arkansas. You went from 9 20-plus yard passes against Florida to only 3 against Arkansas. And I know, look, Arkansas is an SEC team. You got to go out there and play the, guys on the field, and they got up. It's a rivalry game. This is also the 125th ranked passing defense in the country out of 134th. You're telling me that the 10th ranked passing offense in the country, the Texas Longhorns, could not dominate the 125th passing defense in the country against Arkansas? I don't care how hard they were playing on Saturday. That's a matchup that Texas should have been able to dominate. And instead, it felt like Texas was trying to find their rhythm the entire game, and it got into a point where you felt like Arkansas had all the momentum and they could potentially win the game. To me, just this offense did not show up in the manner I thought they would coming off the Florida game. And so then you look at Arkansas, in their last 2 games, they've been absolutely blitzed at home, right? They've lost their last 2 home games by 56 points. Their last game that they played in, Ole Miss absolutely shredded Arkansas. And you're telling me that Texas can't even put up half of the offensive production that Ole Miss did against this same team in that same building just 2 weeks ago? Ole Miss had 63 points, Texas only 20. Ole Miss 694 yards, Texas only 315. Ole Miss 562 passing yards, Texas only 176. You're telling me this offense can't be half as good as Ole Miss against the same defense in the same building? It just does not make any sense to me coming off of a 49-point performance. My second reaction, I thought the reaction to Quinn was harsh. My second takeaway, look, was Quinn great on Saturday? No, right? Did he take a step back from the Florida game? Yes. Has Quinn had the season that we expected from a year 3 quarterback in Steve Sarkisian's system? Probably not. Does Arch Manning do some things better than Quinn Ewers? Probably. Right? You know what I'm saying? But to me, we're asking Quinn Ewers to win games, right? We're not asking him to lead the Heisman race. We're not asking him to put up the best stats. We're asking him to protect the ball and win the game. He protected the ball and he won the game, right? And I get on Twitter after, and it's, Quinn, he holding us back. We can't win the championship with Quinn. Man, Quinn this, Quinn that. Why isn't Archie in yet? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, he didn't light the world up, but we won the game by double digits. And at the end of the day, you'll take that in the SEC matchup. And now I feel like Quinn is under immense pressure because his own fan base, it's not anymore like just it'd be nice to have Arch Manning in. Like it'd be cool to have Arch Manning in. Now people are clamoring for Arch Manning to be the starting quarterback. People are officially done with the Quinn Ewers experience. Texas fans, if Quinn Ewers does not win the national championship this year, even if it's not his fault, the narrative he will have to live with for the rest of his life, and the narrative that Texas fans will take to the grave, is we would have won a championship if Arch Manning was in at quarterback. Quinn Ewers is under immense pressure because his own fan base now believes that Arch Manning is a better option than him at quarterback. Coming off a victory against Arkansas. My last thing is Quinn Ewers is only a product of what's around him. Like we keep asking for more from Quinn Ewers. At this point, we know who Quinn Ewers is. Quinn Ewers is a product of great talent and a great infrastructure around him. When the defense is elite and when we're running the ball at a very high clip, you're going to get the best version of Quinn Ewers. To me, we've been asking for way too much from Quinn Ewers, and we should be demanding more from Steve Sarkisian in this running game. When you look at it, the 64th best rush offense in the country, right? Jaden Blue, 14 for 83, 5.9 yards. He had a good game, but he did fumble. And then Trey Wisner, 17 for 59 yards, only 3.5 yards per carry. If we want to see the best version of Quinn Ewers, we're going to have to run the ball at an elite level. The last 2 years, 25th in the country, 36th in the country, now all the way down to 64th. If we have an elite run game, an elite defense, then you will get the best version of Quinn Ewers. I compare it to Brock Purdy. Like when the 49ers are running it down people's throats and all those talented wide receivers and tight ends or running backs are running all over the field and the defense is hooping, then you're going to get the best version of Brock Purdy. When you're asking Brock Purdy to throw the ball 35, 40 times and be the center of the offense, the 49ers are going to struggle, right? Quinn Ewers is just a product of everything around him. We know what Quinn Ewers is at this point, right? For better or for worse. We need to stop asking so much from Quinn Ewers, and we need to figure out how to run the ball at an elite level again, because that's what's going to keep us from winning a championship, not being able to run the ball like we have the last 2 years in Sark's offense.
You preached to the choir again, John, like you did a couple weeks ago. And you probably took a lot of what we probably needed to say for the last segment on our confidence in Quinn.
I'll repeat it.
No, totally fine. I'm going to try to smooth some of this over and just go with some of the points that you did make, because there was some valid stuff in there. And one thing that we all need to know, Texas fans, is yes, a win is a win when you have to go on the road, face another SEC rival. It's always going to be tough, and it's like having, ugly girlfriends, man. They count too. And you gotta count the win for what it was. But again, when you go out and have the game that you played the previous week and then you come and it's something totally different, what was kind of reminiscent to a couple of games that we saw before the bye, this was a step back for Texas. I want to kind of hit on a couple of good things that did happen. At least the offense does know how to respond and finish games when it needs to. That's great. Congratulations. Here's a problem with that. When we get into the playoffs, sometimes that's going to be too little, too late. Now, a bevy of things come to the inconsistencies, of Texas offense, because it's defense, John. We need to shed a little light on them and how awesome that they've been for the bevy of this season. But I don't know if this is a Sark thing, if this is a Quinn Ewers thing, or it's just a combination of both most of the time. And then these things just attribute to why Texas plays the way it plays. Quinn, oh my God, Quinn is attributed to this system, John. He's going to be a product of this system through and through. And you and I met with each other yesterday. We were watching some of the NFL games. We had an opportunity to kind of talk about the Texas game, what we liked and what we didn't like. And I told you, I said, if anything happens to this team in the playoffs, John, I fear it's going to be due to Quinn Ewers. And I'm going to ride with that for the season. I think he's going to have his days, and we're just going to have to live with that. You mentioned something about the running game, right? And wanting more out of your running game. John, I think this running game is what you got. I think it may not need to be elite. It just needs to be complementary to what Quinn Ewers is trying to do. It needs to be complementary to what Sark and his offense is trying to do, because this is what you're going to get. I've been saying this all season. Who is the one guy in this offense that when things aren't going well, who are you going to prove on to do the thing? And no guy is proved to do the thing yet. Now, that's not bad, because you have ways of offensive players that be able to come in and take this and run with it, and guys can score, and DeAndre Moore can have 2 catches and 2 touchdowns, and it's all fine. But one of these days, and you're going to run up against teams like Georgia again, where these things won't be the case, and you're going to be looking around like who's going to be able to make a play, and nobody's going to be there. Nobody's going to be there. And that's what's going to hit this team in the mouth at the end of the day. Here's one of the good things is they played one of the most clean football games they could probably play offensively, which allowed the defense to be able to make its plays, do what they do, and allowed Sark, at least in spurts, to become an aggressive play caller. All of those things are like really good checks for Texas when you're struggling. And the good thing about it is we can look at these wins and say, despite Texas being a struggling team, despite them doing all the things that they don't or they can't do well or something like that, they can still pull out a win and manage to be great. No, Ewers does not need to be perfect. Everybody subvert your expectations from here on out. Ewers no longer needs to be the guy that's putting up 4 or 5 touchdowns. I see he just doesn't have a feel for the deep ball, John. We love what he did last week, but that's just not who he is. He's going to be a dink and duck guy. He's going to be a system guy. He's going to hit a couple of intermediate routes, and some of that's going to get taken to the house. That's just going to be he's going to be able to benefit from the guys around him, and then through confident means of playing the game. And through the course of the game, Quinn will then repay his guys with some spectacular play here and there. That's just what this team is going to be. But overall, I am happy to see that they was able to pull out a win like this. I think us as Cowboy fans too, John, somewhat. You know how you are these days. We let Jerry out.
Shout out the Mafia, man. Bills Mafia, man. So y'all know where I'm at. I know where I'm at. Look, update your resume, Jerry Jones. Update your resume.
We let Jerry slip out, man. You know, he was kind of getting honored for the game. So I think some of his bad mojo might have started rubbing off on how Texas might have been playing. But all in all, they did what they needed to do to get this win. The running game was okay in spurts when it needed to be. They was able to get some of those chunk plays when they needed to. When you come off of facing a defense the previous week that allowed 20 plus passes, and 30 plus receptions, and then you face a team that's been blown out by 56 plus at home in the last 2 weeks, and you expect your team to be able to pick it up for 1 week and carry it over to the next. But I'm not going to label Texas as a inconsistent team overall, just inconsistent offensively.
Yeah, and like I said, with a year 3 quarterback, one of the most experienced quarterbacks in college football. We were told at the beginning of the season he's a first-round pick. All of this talent, you don't expect to see the offensive inconsistency that we have seen. I understand why, some fans may be clamoring for Arch Manning, because it certainly, looks like, it may be a better option at this point. But, like I said, I just think that we, need to stop asking for so much from Quinn Ewers, because it's clear that he may not have it. And everybody else around him needs to show up in the best way possible.
And I want to say this
recipe for Texas to win.
I want to say this, John. Like Texas fans, we do need to get off this whole put Arch Manning thing in. There's a real thing of quarterbacks actually having time to get acclimated to, real big time games. And I'm not saying, Arch is in his blood. He's a Manning. We've seen his family do it over and over the years. But, just because you feel the name, right? Because we're riding off Arch right now due to a lot of the name. We've seen him in play, but not extenuating play from start to finish against really big name teams. And so I think we can get caught up in the emotion of it. And then we're like, oh, put Arch in, and then what happens? Right? Who's to say Arch will be the key right now? Arch is the key next year. That's why all the Texas fans really want to get to. We want to get to next year so we can see what this all looks like. But right now we're here, and Quinn has to be the guy for this team, and not in a guy as being elite, not in a guy as somebody who has to go out there and toss 5 touchdowns Sunday, but just a guy that has to figure out how to go out here and get the win as a leader of this team and as the quarterback of this team.
For sure. Quick word from our sponsors, then we get into the players of the game from Saturday's 10-point victory against Arkansas. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the National Football League all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play. There's so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, Tony. We did win the game. So who are your players of the game? Who stood out to you on Saturday?
I had the name wrong earlier. It wasn't DeAndre Moore, but it was actually
Matthew Golden. Thank you. I'm glad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I was gonna correct you in private. You know what I mean? I didn't even make a face. You know what I'm saying?
I kind of looked back at my notes. I was like, okay, let me catch myself on that. But hey, again, 2 catches. Yeah, it was 21 yards. But if you give me 2 catches and both of those are touchdowns, I can take that all day. He definitely deserves his praise for just being one of the few, shining pieces to help put things on the board. Jaden Blue. Again, the running game wasn't albeit that impressive, but he did have a big screen run. He had some big juice plays for this offense to kind of help get things along. And I guess it's only right if we single out 2 players and then say the rest of the defense, because Jahdae Barron and Colin Simmons were monsters, man. What Jahdae Barron was able to do, I think that was one of the games yesterday where he may have raised his draft stock, John. I'm sure you're gonna go more into that too. Colin Simmons, we know the work of the body of work, that he's been putting on this season, and just the whole entire defense, man. Again, this defense allowed Texas to be able to hang in until they figured it out offensively, until Sark was able to figure it out through play calling and allow him to be more aggressive. So those are my players of the game, and again, big ups to the defense.
Yeah, 10 straight game with the turnover for the defense. I've gone from saying that, is this an elite unit, to they should be in the conversation for the best defense in the country, to they are the best defense in the country. Now, I know you look at some units like Ole Miss and the way they can get sacks, or some other defenses, and you say, okay, they could cause problems. But I just think consistency, overall body of work. Yes, Texas hasn't played, really any of the best offenses in the country. But from what I see with this defense, like I say, 10th straight game with a turnover, it really doesn't matter. We can be confident and know that this team is going to show up week in and week out and play elite football. I'm going with Jahdae Barron. Obviously, I think you have to mention him. Just intercepting the ball, making tackles in the backfield, getting sacks. Just an elite all-around performance from an outside corner, right? 77.4 defensive grade, according to Pro Football Focus, really good, right? 68 run defense grade from a defensive back, really good. 81.9 pressure grade from a defensive back, exceptional. 73.3 coverage grade, exceptional, right? 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception. Mr. Do-It-All, did it all on Saturday. Alfred Collins, 91.1 defensive grade on Saturday. Who said you can't replace Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy? It looks like we did, with Alfred Collins. Oh, my God, right? That consistency that we've been begging for, right, since 2020. We have been begging for this type of consistency and play from Alfred Collins since 2020. It is finally showing up on a week in and week out basis. We knew that if Alfred Collins really locked in, this is the type of performance we could get on a week in and week out basis. And we're seeing it now. 3 pressures from the defensive tackle position, 3 pressures, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 7 tackles. He was exceptional. Michael Tav, right? I want to give some love to Michael Taft at the safety position. Just a stalwart back there. 8 tackles, 73.2 defensive grade according to Pro Football Focus, 78.1 coverage grade all over the field, making plays, coming downhill, making plays in the run game. Just an elite player at the safety position. Matthew Golden, you touched on it, right? I feel like he's underutilized. We don't get him the ball enough, but 2 touchdowns, one of the best hand catches you'll see over the weekend. You know what I'm saying? Just amazing stuff. Catching that touchdown. I believe it was the second one to put the game away. 8 touchdowns now on only 29 catches this season. You would think, damn, the brother got 8 touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? We should get him more than 29 catches.
The stat lines is weird, man. It's weird.
But let's just keep throwing the ball to the running backs and the tight ends when we got a player like Matthew Golden. You know what I'm saying? Like 29 catch, like I said, 8 touchdowns on 29 catches. But he'll probably be back next year. We'll probably actually throw him on the ball when Arch is in. But anyways, so those are my players of the game. And then honorable mention, he did fumble, so I can't call him a player of the game, but I do got to mention, Jada Blue, second straight game, 100 scrimmage yards, 102 scrimmage yards to be exact. Really showing that explosiveness we thought we would see on a week in and week out basis when Cedric Baxter went down. But we're also seeing the fumbling issues we saw going back to last year in the Sugar Bowl, which may have cost Texas a national championship. So I don't know what you do with Jaden Blue at this point, but he did get 100 scrimmage yards, so that's an honorable mention. And those are my players of the game. Those are Tony's players of the game. And now we have an uncomfortable conversation, or maybe it's uncomfortable.
Not really uncomfortable. Don't worry about it.
All right, there you go. Yeah, I think it's just, I think we'll be all right. But our confidence level in Quinn Ewers for the rest of the season, because like I said, Twitter was putting in the white flag. They're ready to see Arch Manning. They think we need a change right now if Texas wants to win a championship. Not so fast. We'll see our confidence level in Quinn Ewers after the break. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Hold on. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Other features on the Gametime app, all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. All right, so bringing Tony back in, our confidence level in Quinn Ewers moving forward for the remainder of the season. 2 regular season games against Kentucky and Texas A&M should be in the SEC championship if you take care of business in both of those games, and then 3 or 4 playoff games to win a national championship, depending on the results of that SEC championship game. My confidence in Quinn Ewers to win a championship is high. I believe that Quinn Ewers is good enough to win a national championship. The reason I say that is because there is no team in college football right now that I don't believe can be beat. You look at Oregon, the number 1 team in the country. They barely beat Wisconsin over the weekend. Ohio State has shown flaws, even against teams like Marshall, and lost to Oregon. Miami is down double digits every week, right? Georgia, vulnerable. Ole Miss, vulnerable. Tennessee, vulnerable. Indiana's undefeated. They're about to get smacked by Ohio State this weekend. Like, that dream ride is over. There's not a single team in college football that's not flawed or, cannot be beaten. There's no 2021 Georgia with 15 draft picks where it's like there's just nothing you can do. Like, this just isn't your year. There's no 2019 LSU. There's no 2001 Miami. Like, there is no team in college football that cannot be beaten this year. Right? Texas can be, on their best day, the best team in the country. Texas can be, for 3 or 4 straight weeks, the best team in the country, right? Then when I look at Quinn Ewers, once again, the infrastructure around him is good enough to win a national championship. If we are playing defense at an elite level, if we are running the ball at a high level, Quinn Ewers can make the requisite plays needed to win the football game. If you ask Quinn Ewers to throw the ball 40 times to win you a game, that's probably not going to happen. But if everything around Quinn Ewers is up to par, then he is good enough to make the plays needed to win a national championship. So my confidence level in Quinn Ewers moving forward is an 8, even with the inconsistencies we've seen from him this season.
I will go with 6.5, 7 out of 10. Texas all around will be good enough to circumvent a lot of viewers' inconsistencies and mistakes. The defense is elite. The running game can pull him out of holes when needs be. As long as the offensive line does not have a bad day at the office, he should be fine. You got receivers that can take you can go the distance, 40, 50, 60 yards for the touchdown. So with all of those factors into the mix, Quinn should be relatively successful going into the college football playoffs. Now, I didn't state the question once things get rolling, who's the best quarterback, right? Well, you have guys like Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, and albeit they're fighting for their lives every single week, but he's really, really good. Will Howard is playing a little bit better. Dylan Gabriel, we're aware of what he's made out of. Now, and then it's where does Quinn kind of fit into the mix of all of this? And then what all those teams have around them that will allow them to circumvent their own inconsistencies and or quarterback play. Quinn is just in a very interesting position this year. And let's just say, for the sake of it, John, if Arch Manning didn't exist and some of those games don't play out the way that they did, and he doesn't get sat down in the Georgia game and that messes with his confidence, maybe in another reality, we're looking at a different Quinn Ewers. And at first, this was Heisman talk. Now, this is confidence in Quinn questions and how we feel about him going forward. You see how fast life comes at us, right? And so I told you, and I said this early in the segment, John, if something happens to Texas in the playoffs, I wholeheartedly believe it will be because Quinn Ewers failed to show up that day. And I think that's just what it's going to be. Texas fans, I don't think he's ever going to intentionally, hurt us with bad play. I think Quinn does try to play within the system, and I think Sark does enough to try to not put Quinn in bad spots or put him in a situation that he can't, be cerebral in, or those different types of things. And Quinn just lacks some quarterback nuances that he kind of needs to get down. His feel for pressure in the pocket needs work. He seems to be a little stagnant when he should be moving his feet and stepping up in the pocket when there's blitzing. There's so many things that we can write about when it comes to this guy, but he does enough to win. And sometimes that's good enough. I think a lot of times as fans, we always want the top 5 quarterback guy. We always want the guy that's going to come out and throw the 5-6 touchdowns, the guy that's going to come out and spin out the broken tackle and run for 60 yards. And only so many of those guys exist, John. Only so many of those guys exist. And so in some shape, form, or fashion, we should be appreciative of what we get out of Quinn Ewers, at least on his best day, right? Because he's still a fairly good quarterback. He is above average. He is something that you can say he can help a program go and win some games, right? If you mean to tell me there are going to be maybe 2 or 3 more games on this schedule where Quinn does show up like he did last week and he looks really good, I'll take it. And that's just what we're going to have. And as long as everybody else around Quinn is doing well, as long as things just don't go totally wrong and the offensive line isn't holding call this and these things aren't happening and the defense just remains elite, that's good enough. Honestly, we're in a little bit better shape than teams like Georgia is. Carson Beck isn't playing that much better than a guy like Quinn Ewers is. Dylan Gabriel isn't playing just head above shoulders better than a guy like Quinn Ewers is. Cam Ward is great.
I disagree on that one, but go ahead.
Okay.
I disagree on that one, but yeah, go ahead.
Cam Ward is fighting for his life with Miami to be as good as he is because he has to pull his coach out of holes every single week. So we aren't the only ones with wishing, that our quarterback was just a lot better, right? Is he NFL level talent? Whatever remains to be seen. I don't think he is, but he's good enough to have Texas where they are today. And we are where we are in part because of what Quinn has done, how good he is, and what he may still be able to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out for the remainder of the year. They got teams like Texas A&M and stuff coming up. We'll see how that turns out, but should be good enough to hopefully, you higher on them than I am, John. You're higher on than I am, man. So, I'll ride with your good vibes for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that we're just in the romance stage with Arch Manning still. Like Arch Manning hasn't had that game yet where we're like, oh, he's human. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Arch a side
so,
piece. Who's a side piece?
so
I'm trying to wonder that.
I mean, I don't know. But like I said, I think that, we're just still in the romance stage with Arch Manning. And so, just like anything in life, you're only as good as your alternatives. Like no other team has an Arch Manning as the backup quarterback. So Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback. Like you can win with Quinn Ewers. The problem is teams feel like this, or Texas fans feel like this team has a higher ceiling with Arch Manning because he hasn't done anything to show them that he may not have a higher ceiling with this football team. And so, like I said, it's almost now where Quinn Ewers has more pressure on him than any player in college football, because if he does not win a championship, the narrative for the remainder of time will be that Arch Manning would have won. We would have been good enough to win if we would have just put Arch Manning in. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, Tony on Mondays, Kentucky next, and then the return of the Lone Star Showdown, Texas A&M. Hook 'em. Peace.